our brains receive 200 million bits of information per second. At the same time, our brain will help us process the information three ways. It's either going to generalize, delete, and distort.
Cindy Saylor is the founder and chief ant whisperer of Saylor's Journey, a personal and professional development coaching business focused on brain health and mental fitness. Cindy embarked on her new journey after leaving a 3-decade career in the world of hospitality. With the gift of service, Cindy is serving her higher purpose to guide individuals to live the life that they are meant to live. I know that raised some questions. You're probably wondering, what is a chief ant whisperer? We're going to talk about what that is, but this conversation is going to be all about your own mental fitness. We're going to talk about your brain health. What is brain health? What goes into that? As well as what can you do on a daily basis in order to strengthen your brain, in order to strengthen not just your physical fitness, but your mental fitness, so that you can take your own personal and professional development to the next level. So when you take away even just one tidbit or piece of advice or strategy, or maybe Cindy or myself made you smile, all that we ask is you share this show with just one other person who could use this message as well. You are the reason the broadcast has grown the way that it has over the past 2 years, with almost 300 episodes and so many incredible guests. And we want to keep that going for you. And you allow us to do that because you are the best part of the Be Better team. So without further ado, let's talk to Cindy Saylor, the Chief Ant Whisperer. Great to have you, Cindy. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
All the way from Denver, Colorado, a mile in the sky. So Cindy, talk to me. What is a Chief Ant Whisperer? I've never heard that description before.
You know, it's interesting how we have these titles, right? And we want to have a clever title. And I was thinking about it, Chief something. And what's the main thing I focus on is automatic negative thoughts. It's the ants. A is automatic, N is negative, T is thought. So it's the ants. My program is about automatic negative thoughts. And I thought, well, I am an ant whisperer. I'm helping individuals understand they have negative thoughts on a regular basis. And usually when I do my programs, one of my first questions I ask, who's had a negative thought today? And all the hands go up.
Yeah.
And that's where it all kind of came from, is I'm helping individuals understand what's happening here. So I'm an ant whisperer.
Yeah, no, that's like one of the biggest things I hear when I work with clients in the life coaching side of what I do is the self-talk is how they label it. And it's always, not always, but for the most part, it's negative self-talk, right? It's these things that we say to ourselves. And I remember back when I started my own personal development journey in a conscious way, I didn't even consciously realize that I was having these negative thoughts. I was just going through my day in an automatic way without realizing that there's this chain of communication in my head going on at all times that sometimes was constructive, but for the most part wasn't serving me whatsoever.
Correct. That, you know, and it's one of the things that I've really learned from in doing all my coaching business, helping individuals to get from point A to point Z. I had to start here. So I shifted everything up. Like, we need to work on what internal dialogue is somebody having, or what is their narrative. We could do some great coaching with individuals only to have them fall prey to what's happening upstairs. And so that's where my main focus is to help individuals mentally with their thoughts, and then be able to go, okay, let's get over all the ants. Let's get over the rant, but I also like to call the rant because the R is like random, automatic negative thoughts happening on a regular basis. Let's get over that. Let's come up with some better dialogue to support you on your journey through life, and then do the coaching from A to Z.
Yes, I love that. When did you say to yourself, okay, this is a big problem in the world today? There's a lot of people, especially now, especially after 2020, who they were cooped up for a long time. They weren't having conversations with people. They went on the internet, their algorithms became negative. And that's just what the content is that they were consuming. Like, when did you realize that this was a problem and you said, you know what, I need to step in and help to make a difference in this area?
It was definitely part of my own journey being diagnosed with dyslexia when I was in 8th grade. And the things that I heard growing up were 3 words: hard, your life is going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, you're going to struggle. However, even though I heard those words, the way my brain processed it is I'm dumb and stupid. And through neurolinguistics of learning your brain language, which I'm a practitioner of, that's when I started learning how I can information. And in doing so, through my coaching and also with 2020, which just created complete chaos for so many people, like the majority of us, I realized seeing the statistics for mental health were already off the charts in 2019, off the charts. And then let's throw a pandemic in the mix. And now what are we faced with? And I was thinking about my coaching business at the time, going, I really want to focus on knowing how are people processing information. Because if I could take 3 words and change those words in my head in 8th grade, what are individuals doing today?
Whoa. Okay, so I know people personally who identify as dyslexic, right? And some of these individuals, like even to this day, they say things like, "Oh, it's hard for me to read that because I'm dyslexic," right? It's still something that holds them back. But I feel that a lot of these individuals haven't thought to themselves, this is something that I can actually improve. And I'm curious to hear from you actually. So dyslexia, I've never heard of someone eliminating it. Right. So I'm curious, were you able to eliminate your dyslexia or learn to better live with dyslexia?
Being able to better live with dyslexia to the point where I actually enjoy it. Which,
Wow.
which is actually going to be hard for a lot of individuals who I'd like to call our dyslexian family. You may find, and that's what we do, right? As dyslexians, it's our learning center in our brain that processes information. It'll either jumbo words or turn things around or mash up words. Sometimes we mash up words or I mash up sentences, and my husband points it out on a regular basis and go, do you realize what you just said? And it's like, well, tell me again, because sometimes we don't realize we're doing it.
Mm.
However, what we've been taught is we downgrade it or we demean ourselves for saying something that wasn't correct. And it's just maybe through society or what we learned growing up or from our peers. What I've learned is to embrace it. My brain is clever. I have a different language. Remember, neurolinguistics is the language.
Yeah.
My language wrapped around dyslexia comes from a very good place in my heart to say, yes, I process things differently. However, I also have changed my dialogue. So when you mention you have friends saying, oh, that's hard for me to read because of my dyslexia, I say, I'm going to make this a fun and easy project to read this.
Yes.
You have to understand. Let me give you an example. Have you ever lost your keys?
Oh, yeah.
What are the first things you tell yourself?
Where are my keys? Or I'm angry at myself. Like, how did I do that? Like, why didn't I take better care to pay attention to where I was putting them?
I lost my keys. I can't find my keys. Darn it, I can't find my keys. Where are my keys? Every time we say I can't find something or it's hard to find, I can't find it, we're telling our brain not to help ourselves find our keys. And this is where we want to change up the linguistic piece of how we're speaking or whatever our narrative is to say, okay, I will find my keys. I know exactly where my keys are. Most likely for women, we dump out our purse and we're scrambling around and they're right there. But when we tell ourselves, because usually in plain sight, they're right there.
Yeah.
But because we told our brain not to find them, not to help us, not to see them, we don't.
Yes.
Same thing. So this also happens for dyslexians. When we say it's hard or it's difficult, it will be. But if we say it's going to be fun and easy, I'm going to enjoy this journey. And like a lot of your friends that you mentioned will not read because it's difficult. I have a library of books now because I enjoy reading.
That's beautiful.
I've got 3 books by my bedside. I have 2 on my desk behind me. I enjoy reading. Was it difficult to get started? Yes. Do I enjoy it now? Yes. Has it become easier? Absolutely. Am I able to read faster now? Yes.
Cool.
I don't compare myself to other people anymore. It was a matter of let's pick up a book, let's start reading. And that's what I wish we would tell our dyslexian families out there or our community. Pick up a book, just start at the beginning and get as far as you can.
Wow.
And then do it a little bit each time. And now, because a lot of times we'll hear people, oh, I finished a book in a day. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
How did you finish a book in a day?
Mm-hmm.
That's not the goal. For any dyslexian out there, that's not your goal. The goal is to finish the book in your own time.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to encourage people is change the dialogue, pick up a book, start from the beginning, and just get as far as you can each and every day. It's making those small little improvements each and every day for your own life.
Yeah. I've got a framework called the 5 P's of performance, and the 5th P is progress. And the whole principle is simple. It's 1% improvement every single day. 1%.
Absolutely.
And comparison is so fascinating because even with you saying I used to compare and I stopped comparing myself, this morning I was reading a book, and I read a lot of books, but when I'm reading the book, I'm always thinking like, maybe I should have taken that fast reading course by Bob Berg, or maybe, there's people out there who could read this book in 45 minutes, yet I'm sitting here for a week with this book. What am I doing wrong? Rather than saying to myself, I am reading a book, and even if it takes me a week to get through this book, I'm going to learn something that I'll be able to use for the rest of my life. The shift in language there is absolutely astounding.
Yes. And that's so true, Brandon. I would say, what is your intention of reading a book?
To learn.
Absolutely. And then through that learning process, is it a matter of I'm just going to get from point A to point Z and maybe learn one thing out of the book, or will I learn something from each chapter? Or will I learn something from each page? And then maybe take in that information and see how it applies to yourself or how it can apply to your family, or maybe you want to share it with somebody. Content is important. And the content really depends on the individual receiving it at a point in time in their life.
Yes.
There's times where I'll read a book again and go, wow, I didn't get this out of the first time I read it or the second time. And it's only because where am I in my life right now? Well, now it pertains to my life. Okay, I'm going to sit and resonate with this one particular section. And I believe that's what a book is meant to do. It's not meant to get from, the beginning to the end. It's really all the good, juicy content inside on how it makes us feel and what we can do with it.
Books are beautiful.
Yeah.
And I was laying in bed the other night and I looked at my wife and I just held the book and I was like, just look at this. I was like, this book here, this object contains decades of wisdom that we get to read in a week's time or 2 weeks' time or however long it takes you to get through that. No time limit, right? And she's just looking at me like, here he goes again on one of these little charades. But it's true. Books are some of the most beautiful things. There's one thing I want to hone in on what you said earlier that is so true. You said, I used to say I can't do this, right? I can't find my keys. This 2-word phrase is the death of much ambition when it comes to human beings. And just yesterday, I had a conversation with a very confident man, very confident, very successful, financially successful, great people in his life. Never would have expected that this man felt the way he felt. But he said to me, Brandon, I've got this party I'm going to later for a family member.
Mhm.
And I get so much social anxiety at the idea of going to this party. And this is a man that's been on several podcasts that I've had the honor of being on in the local area. And he's so well spoken. He's got a beautiful voice. And I'm like thinking to myself, he's socially anxious. I was like, very fascinating. So I said, tell me, like, how does that manifest itself? What do you mean by that? And he said, well, when I get there, it's just that I can't be myself, right? He said, I can't be myself. And I said, interesting. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, if you could be yourself, then what would you do? What would be different? And he said, well, I'd walk up to this person and see how they've been. I'd walk up to this person. I'd have a smile on. I'd be excited. And then, I won't go into the whole conversation, but we dove into each of those things in order to morph that phrase of I can't into what will I actually do? What's my plan going into this social situation, right? But those two words, it's so interesting how I can't just stops us in our tracks. So you mentioned earlier that just by shifting the language from I can't to I know I will find my keys, or I will find my keys, or I will have a great social experience at this party, or I will do this. What happens, Cindy, in the brain when we're changing that language pattern from I can't to I know that I will?
That's a very good question. It's quite complex, and I'm going to try to keep it short.
Yes.
Our brain, and it's been scientifically tested, our brains receive 200 million bits of information per second. 2 million BPS per second. How are we receiving all that information? Through all of our senses. At the same time, our brain will help us process the information three ways. It's either going to generalize, delete, and distort. It's also our reference guide. It's going to file all of our experiences. All of this information is getting filed away. And when we're raising children, you always hear the phrase, be careful what you say around the kids because they're human sponges. They're going to absorb it. I'm here to tell you, your brain, no matter how old you get, is constantly working. It is absorbing information, filing it away. And what happens with that is then we have reference points. We have reference points. So we can generalize, delete, or distort. This also happens with communication. This is when we might have miscommunication with our loved ones or our partners. But when we are telling our brain, I can't see it, I can't find it, we're telling the brain not to help us. The brain's like, okay, well, the reference I have for that is I'm not going to help you. And how you're going to act is you're going to become Tasmanian devil, and you're going to terrorize the house, and you're going to empty out all your pockets, and you're going to empty, because we create patterns. It creates a pattern. From that pattern is what happens with our behaviors. When we tell our brain, I know exactly where my keys are, you're going to help me find them. Next thing you know, you open up your purse, boom, there they are. Or the brain says, do you remember your schedule yesterday? You came home, you took your coat off, but you left your keys in that right pocket. Yes, that's where my keys are. It will help remind you where where you left them, or your last action was. The verbiage we use, like you said, I can't, will trip us up. When we say, yes, I will find it, yes, I know where it is, it gives us the certainty, it gives us the belief within us that we know exactly where it is, and that's where we go to find it. It's like, yes, instead of having this manic, anxious way of behavior that we've lost something, which we create, a pattern and a habit, we shift it. We're able to shift our behaviors, we're able to shift our habits by telling our brain, either our brain will run our lives, or we tell our brain to run our lives. And that's what we need to control. And that's what we are in control of. And it's a really good habit to get, and just using the keys as an example, it's a good way to start this whole new dialogue, is to say, I know exactly where that is. I know exactly where I left it. And the brain goes, yeah, you do. You absolutely do know where it is.
Mhm. It's so liberating to know that
Yeah.
by shifting the way that we say things, whether it's
Yeah.
externally or internally in our own mind, essentially, can open up a pathway that wasn't open before, that can allow that information to come through. And it's not even allowing the information to come through, but how does one feel when
Mhm.
you go from saying, I can't do this? Like I work, I'm in sales for a decade now. And when I hear people say, I'm not a salesperson, I can't sell. And when they say that, immediately they've blocked themselves off to any option in the world that would allow them to become a better salesperson or communicator, right? But when they say, I know I can get better at this, I know I can become this, then you're opening up that pathway that then allows those options and experiences and opportunities to even be a part of your daily experience, all because you shifted your language.
Absolutely. And I like to tag on that, because you're tipping on something but not quite speaking it. The feeling.
Hmm.
Our words and our thoughts are connected to our emotions and how we feel, which means you're either going to feel happy or crappy. And so I'd like to ask you, do you know any happy, crappy people out there? Because I'm still looking for them, because you can't be happy or crappy at the same time. It doesn't work. The brain cannot function that way. But one of the things I want folks to understand, it's a little poem. What I think, so I feel. What I feel, so I do. What I do, so I have.
Hmm.
It's simple. However, it really ties into whatever thought you're going to have a feeling behind it. So either it's going to bring excitement or despair, which means, will you act on it? Will you actually do something or not do something? And then that have section, well, then you either have a really bad experience or you have a really great experience. And so that I can't thing actually goes away very quickly.
Interesting. And I'm assuming that when you say it goes away, you begin to become aware of you saying that. And
Yes,
then that awareness allows you to change and shift that language model.
absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. Because once you're able to connect with the feeling you have attached to words and phrases, and realize, when I do say this, I'm not making progress, as you had mentioned in your pillars, you're not making that progress. You're able to actually internalize that and go, well, I'm not making progress because of this. If I practice this little poem, either if I'm hesitating, it's like, why did I hesitate? Why did I stop? Practice the poem.
Yeah. Because you can deconstruct it. If you're not feeling great, you can then ask, well, what am I thinking about right now? Or what did I think about just a minute ago? And then that question helps you to become aware of the dialogue that's happening in your mind.
Yes. And you really hit the nail head. Be careful. I have to be careful. Sometimes the dyslexian comes in and goes, what am I trying to say? What is
Yep.
that phrase? But you hit it on the head.
Yeah.
It's awareness. The biggest thing is to bring awareness, because all of the information is stored in our subconscious. The brain stores in the subconscious, but when we bring it to the conscious level and we're aware of it, that's when we can actually take proactive action to shift our thoughts and shift our phrases and the words we're using.
I love that. I want to talk about what that proactive action looks like. But before that, for those listening, they hear the keys one, and that's easy to relate to because we've all lost our keys.
Yep.
And with the people that you work with on a very frequent basis, you mentioned patterns that we get ourselves into, right?
Mhm.
What are some of the most common patterns that
Mhm.
you are finding in those that you're working with that they might not even be aware of, but you're helping them to become aware of and
Mhm.
shift?
There's so many. I'm going to say one of the biggest ones, especially because I deal with a lot of the communication piece. The communication you have with yourself, the communication you have with others, it's important. And one of the pieces is reading an email. You may get a lot of emails from supervisors, management, and I'm going to ask you, have you created a pattern of reading between the lines and putting a lot of emotion, thinking that there's a lot of emotion in the email? And you have a lot of self-doubt in yourself. A lot of times we're reading things from other people, but internalizing it that I didn't do well. They don't appreciate my work. You have all these negative thoughts related to an email, and you're really putting more emotion that you don't need to into it. And this is part of the ants, the ant
Mm.
program. The automatic negative thought program I have is to help individual understand what their brain language is. And if they are reading more into like an email and getting all of this anxiety and self-doubt and thinking that they're going to lose their job or the boss doesn't like them or they didn't perform well, you have to sit back and take the emotion out of reading an email. And this comes up a lot, and it's a lot of the self-doubt that individuals have about themselves or the lack of self-confidence. And how I'm able to get them to realize it is like a couple questions. Have you done anything wrong to prompt that you're going to lose your job?
Yes.
And they're like, no. Then where does this feeling come from? Let's find the root cause of why you feel this way. Or how about knocking on your boss's door and having a conversation? We get so scared for some reason of knocking on somebody's door because we're perceiving the conversation is going to go in a negative way. Instead of having the confidence and say, I want to understand your email better.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Where is this coming from? This, this is what I've accomplished. This is what I brought to the table. I want to understand your email.
Yeah. And the way that they verbalize that could be very different than the way that they wrote that, because now you have the context of sound and sight of seeing them express themselves. And then after they explain it, you're thinking to yourself, wow, this is completely different than what I thought the email was actually communicating.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In today's society and the workload everyone's doing, texting and emailing, it makes life easier. We're trying to get a lot of information out there. At the same time, how are people processing the information? That same email could go to more than one person and everybody's going to perceive it differently.
Mm.
It's kind of like that game. If we have 20 people in the room and I whisper a story in one person's ear and ask them to repeat that story, right? And we get to the 20th person and we come back to the first person and go, okay, share the stories.
Mm-hmm.
And they're completely different. And remember, I mentioned when our brain processes information, well, the other person's brain is also processing information. What are their reference points? Are they deleting, generalizing, distorting the information they heard based off of their life experiences, what was more important to them to listen to, and then they pass that story on. So when these emails go out and we want to try to like push progress, through the business world, the sender has to understand how is everyone going to perceive this email?
Yes.
And how is everyone going to feel, right? Well, how is it going to make them feel maybe about themselves, about their production at work? Because that's important. And what we want to do is we want to really inspire and encourage people that they're doing a great job.
Yes.
But it gets missed in the translation because majority of the time we're reading between the lines or we're reading more into it. We're putting feelings into it where the feelings just shouldn't even come in existence.
Mm-hmm.
If you're feeling this way, the best thing to do is to knock on the person's door and ask for clarity. I'm a bit confused, or I just want some clarification. It helps because it opens up the dialogue. Everyone gets to talk. And instead of being, if the email came in at 9 o'clock in the morning and you don't knock on your boss's door until 2 or 3, have you had a full day of anxiety?
Oh, yeah.
Let's eliminate that. Let's not have the anxiety level escalate throughout the day. Get the email, read it, not too sure, ask for clarity. Send a reply. I would like some clarification. Is there a way we could set up a meeting? When are you free? Couple minutes of your time.
It's almost comical how we can create an entire reality that's not true and worry about something that's not even real because of us reading between the lines. And for everyone listening, I do this frequently. And I'm getting better at being aware of this. And I'll give you an actual example. But I think your example of the email specifically is very powerful for two sets of people. Me being both of those sets, and many people listening also playing that part at times, which is the person who is reading between the lines and also the person who is sending that email. Because if you're equipped with this information and you're the one sending the communication, what is the goal of communication? It's to be understood. It's to convey a message and have it be understood and received by the most amount of people possible. And if you're equipped with this knowledge, you can ask yourself before you send this email, how can I best communicate this message? And what are some of the different ways that people might perceive this message? And how can I tailor it in the way so that it's received in the way that I want it to be received? It's in a way, it is sales. It is persuasion and influence in the written word. Right. But we can do this in our spoken word as well. How can I move in order to be received? How can I speak in order to be best received? Now, the example I wanted to give, it's funny you bring this up because I sent a text message again yesterday. A lot happened yesterday, apparently. I sent a text message to someone who was in the same room as me. I was in a room with like maybe 6 other people. And I sent a text to the person because I didn't want to yell it across the room. So I texted it, right? That's what we do nowadays. And it was a funny joke. And I texted it to the person and they're on their phone, right? And I look over to see if they got the text and they didn't reply to it. They weren't smiling. They weren't laughing. So I'm like, oh my God, maybe this wasn't received well. Maybe I shouldn't have sent that message. Maybe I overstepped my boundary. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe they didn't think it was funny. This isn't good. And for the next 15 minutes, I'm thinking, how could this person not reply to my message? Right? They're not doing anything right now. They're just on their phone where the message is like, and I'm creating this narrative. And then 15 minutes later, I hear a laugh from across the room and I look over and they're looking at me laughing and smiling. And they said, I got your text. Right. So for the last 15 minutes, I'm nervous and anxious and worrying when this person hadn't even read the message yet. And it ended up having the effect that I wanted it to have. So again, it goes back to the idea that we can worry for a prolonged period of time when it wasn't even necessary to worry in the first place.
Absolutely. And we will utilize a lot of our precious time. And we all know you can't get time back. So we'll utilize that time in the present moment to worry and create this anxiety when we really should be present and looking at the individuals in front of us, at this event, still connecting with them. So that 15 minutes, what did you miss out on?
Better thoughts, for sure. Feeling
Better
good.
thought. Absolutely. And we do this on a regular basis. One of the things that I would recommend is you send the text and you send it. One of the things that you mentioned, though, you like, instead of yelling across the room, I'm going to send a text. And I thought that was interesting how you actually wanted to yell something. And I thought, well, if he's sending the text, does he still have this notion that he's yelling while he's texting? And is that going to come across in the text?
Absolutely.
And that's another thing we want to be careful of is when we are corresponding back and forth and we're not in front of each other, having a conversation, seeing people's emotions and their tone, and if they're excited, what state of being are you in at that moment when you're sending an email or sending a text? Because that can also be conveyed, because that's energy. It's like you're sending energy out there. And
Yes.
individuals pick up on the energy. So they may pick up like, I think he was yelling at me. But you don't know that, right? You don't know that. But there is that sense, because we're energetic beings, and what we put out is what we receive in
Mhm.
an energetic way. So when we're sending these emails, are you in a calm state? Or are you full of anxiety and you're sending it and you're kind of maybe pissed off or something happened, but you're not pissed off at the person you're sending it to?
True.
It's just your state of being at the time that you're doing it. That may also come through it in the email, and that
Yeah.
may affect the other person. So we also want to be present, like you were mentioning. Let's make sure that the narrative is good, that we're conveying the right message, and I'm in the right state of mind. I have the right state of energy, and I'm sending this from a good place, from a, with grace and ease to help support the team.
That's one of the biggest lessons I learned when I moved into leadership is never to reply to an email, never to call someone when I'm angry or upset, because it will
Yeah.
always be conveyed, especially with me. Like when I text, there's 1,000 exclamation points at all times because it's excitement. However, that could be misread maybe as anger or something of that sort, right? Especially depending on what the message says or the context or whatever. So that awareness of communication is powerful. And I'm glad that we went in that direction in this conversation. And the last thing I'll mention on this too, before I ask you more about this process of eliminating these ants, right? And specifically your course that really dives deep into this, which is Stop Ranting and Start Living. One thing I wanted to mention for those listening who you might have heard me mention this before, guys, but there's a book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Yes.
And it's a great book. It's a very short book. You can read it in not too much time, but if it takes you a lot of time to read it, that's okay too, right? So this book, there's a chapter, one of the four agreements is never make assumptions. And I find myself making a lot of assumptions, but again, I'm being better at this as I go forth in my days. But don't make assumptions, because the assumption that you're creating is very likely not the true reality. And it goes along with what we're talking about here with the email and the texting and all those things. So that's a great book to go pick up and read if you haven't read it already, guys. But my question for you, Cindy, is you've got your course, Stop Ranting and Start Living, right? And there's a link in the description, guys, to go check out Cindy's course that I just mentioned, as well as all the other things that she has on her website too. What's the process when you ask that question at the beginning of, you speaking with a client, maybe for the first time, of, do you have negative thoughts, right? And they're going to raise their hand. We're human. What does the process look like? If you could give us like a summarized version of how you guide that person through becoming more aware and ultimately shifting that narrative to one that's more empowering.
One of the things I want individuals to understand is it's just not about your thoughts, but it's also about how your brain is wired and how your brain functions. And so we go through the process of understanding the amount of information you're receiving, also where your narrative may have come from. Our influencers, which are our teachers, our peers, our family members, grandparents, we've heard dialogue growing up, and that dialogue gets programmed. It's automatic. And this is our reference point. We really dive into the process of understanding, what is your narrative? Where did your narrative come from? Who are your influencers are in life? And in regards to the ants, it's going through each one. And I'm here to tell you that there's 7 highly regarded ants in the ant world. There could be more, you could have a combination, but the 7 highly guarded ones, we go through each one. And honesty is the best policy. You sit down and go, yes, I do those things. Yes, I say those things. And it's a matter of identifying that, yes, I use certain phrases, but then I'm also going to come up with some better language.
Mm.
Because right now the brain is got its reference guide to help navigate your life. Not that it's right or wrong, but it can be better. God bless our parents for raising us when they did. God bless the parents out there right now raising kids and what's happening today. You're doing the best that you can. At the same time, we could also do better with having better communication.
Yes. Where can we find those new references for better and stronger communication? Because you don't know what you don't know. And awareness is a great place to start. However, I know that one person might be listening and they're saying, okay, well, what would the better communication be that I shift to? What would you recommend to people in order to feed their mind with those new ideas?
Well, one of the things, as you mentioned, I have my course, and the course is really great from an individual standpoint, or it could be used for corporate America organizations. I'm working with a lot of government agencies right now, with a lot of the caregivers, social workers,
Mhm.
individuals that were on the front lines to help them have better communication with themselves. It's a matter of starting with yourself. Those of us that are in the world of helping others, you have to heal yourself before you could heal somebody else. And neurolinguistics is a wonderful place to, you can get books on neurolinguistics to learn a certain different styles of language, how people communicate. You can also follow me on Facebook. I'm going to be sharing a lot more information there. I don't know if
Mhm.
I should be plugging that, but I just
No,
did.
please do. Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. Because when
Yeah.
I was introduced to this world of personal development, my influences first were Rhonda Byrne was the first influence for me that made me realize, wow, there is a different way of thinking and going about living life. And for those,
Yes.
most of you guys know, but Rhonda Byrne wrote The Secret. And I read that book and I thought, you can think this way. This is real. This is kind of weird, but it's different. And I need something different right now in my life. So I adopted it. And then I followed people like Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and all these other big names that most people know. If you don't, go check them out. But I'm glad you plugged your Facebook, because we need more influences that are showing us a better way, that are giving us this positive influence. There's so many influences on the opposite end, especially if you're watching reality TV or these dating shows or whatever, where you're going to get a boatload of the negative stuff.
Yeah.
When really, if you just overflow your feed with positive influences, right, your narrative will begin to shift, your language will begin to shift, people around you will start to say, wow, Cindy, this isn't like you, what's happening with you, you're a lot more positive lately, you're a lot more bright lately, you're a lot more energetic. And the more you feed yourself this positive input, the more that you'll be able to espouse that onto the other people, which is beautiful that you're working with these caregivers. And my wife is a hospice social worker,
Hmm.
and I hear stories upon stories of times that she's helping her clients to shift their language because she's working with people in their final days. So it's very powerful that you are working with these people to help them to better help other people at the same time.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to your wife. I call them our beautiful land angels.
Mm,
I had my father in hospice, and the caregivers were just off the charts. And there is a special person for that job, and I thank her on what she's doing because I know how much it means to the family. So thank you.
that's awesome. She's definitely going to watch this because I talked to her about this subject before, and she's like, I want to check that out. And she's actually the one, because I mentioned the dyslexia, and she's actually the one who said, you need to ask her, did she overcome it? Did she learn to better live with it? So that was a question from her. So I know she'll be tuning into this. So absolutely. Thank you for saying that. And with your course, so for people who have never taken an online course, this is something where they'll go to the description, they'll invest the very small investment in order to go through this to gain an even bigger benefit. Like, what does it look like to go through this course? Is it like they'll watch videos? Like,
Mhm.
give us an idea of what we can expect when we go through it.
Thank you. And yes, the online version is being birthed as we speak. Technology has been one of my downfalls, I will admit. And what have I called it? Whenever I said it was hard, it was hard. But I'm embracing that it's fun and easy, and that's what
Mm,
I'm doing right now. And it's going to be live before May 5th, just to let everyone know. But what it's going to be is you're going to have me as your guide through each course. You're going to be doing, it's a workshop. It is an active workshop. There's going to be quizzes at the end. Don't panic. Quizzes are good. It helps with our short-term memory. It's recall. It's a good exercise for our brain. When I say quizzes, I'm helping you exercise your brain. So that is a good tip. And you're just going to go through each step. It's going to be watching a video, going through some slides, doing some exercises, answering the quiz, and then being able to move on to the next course, the next module. It is designed to go from the beginning to the end. You cannot jump from one subject to the next. You have to go through it in sequence, and you could do it at your own time, at your own leisure, and you'll have accessibility for a whole year.
That's great and beautifully described, by the way. And you are learning to master technology because we're here today because you embraced the technology, right? We got your camera, we got your mic working. We're having a great conversation because you shifted your belief around technology. And I think it's great that this course will be available for people to take everything that we talked about today and dive deeper into the part that makes the most sense for them. So guys, there's a link in the description to go check out Cindy's upcoming course, Stop Ranting and Start Living. And I say upcoming, but by the time this episode launches, that course will be launched as well, right in the early days of May. So be sure to go check that out. Now, you mentioned Facebook, Cindy. Is there any other place that we should go and follow you if we just love what you're talking about and we want to hear more from you?
Absolutely. From doing all my private events with my clients, either in corporate America or with the government agencies, individuals that are taking the classes are actually saying, we want to hear more, which I didn't realize. Okay, that means learning some more technology, which means YouTube. Oh my gosh. I will be launching Vibulicious, VIBYOU, Licious, because we are vibrant beings. It's all about you to have a delicious life. It's launched, and I'm starting to add more material each and every day. So Vibulicious is on YouTube. Come join, come subscribe, and be able to be your vibrant selves. That's what it's all about. There's two reasons why we are here on earth. It's one of my favorite quotes from Mark Twain. The day that you were born and the day you find out why.
Whoa.
And I'm hoping to help you find out your why. So please join me at Vibulicious.
Wow. Love that. What a cool name too. I'm going to have a link to that YouTube channel in the description so you guys can check out Vibulicious. That's a media outlet right there. That is a place that I just can't imagine the potential of that because we need that in the world today. And it's great that you're contributing to that, Cindy. Thank you for sharing that great quote from Mark Twain. And even more so, thank you for joining us today to share your wisdom and your experience. And you shared decades of learnings in 48 minutes. So thank you for being here to share all that you know. I'm grateful to have met you and I'm grateful to have spoken with you. So thank you so much.
Brandon, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your kindness on helping me get to here because we had a few hiccups, and I appreciate you just being so gracious and allowing me to have this opportunity. And I think I have now a mic in my hand that I may never put down. So thank you.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you. You have a great day, Cindy.
You too. Thank you.
I hope that you now have more tools in order to be more aware of these ants in your life, the automatic negative thoughts, right? And again, we all have these. I personally, maybe you don't, maybe you're enlightened and you're listening because for whatever other reason, but I know I do, right? I make assumptions. I create a narrative that might not be true. And I find out 4 hours later that it wasn't true, or maybe even worse, a couple of days later. So now I've been worrying for several days when that worry didn't need to exist in the first place. I don't know if you can relate to that, but if you can, then I know you took a lot out of this conversation with Cindy Saylor. And what I took away most from this conversation myself was the idea and the empowerment that I am in control of what I decide to latch on to when it comes to my thoughts. And I am in control of creating the narrative that best serves me, that allows me to go out there and live my best life, helping other people to live their best life. So if you took even one thing away from this conversation, please share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. Thank you for being the best part of the Be Better team. And be sure to go to the description, check out Cindy's website where you can find her Stop Ranting and Start Living online course that you can go through and exercise your brain and really dive deeper into these principles, as well as checking out the Vibulicious YouTube channel if you want to consume even more content on this exact subject. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.